Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes, a TV commercial. Oh, what's it for? It's for my YouTube channel. You see, I'm what the cool kids on the interwebs like to refer to as a niche micro-internet celebrity. So yeah, kind of a big deal, as you could probably... Hello? Hello? Fourth time this week they've hung up on me. Oh hey, it's you! As you can see, I'm just being a good entrepreneur and taking a few risks to expand my business, like many great businesses before me have. Just take examples such as New Coke. Everybody loves New Coke. Making a drink already infamous for being a symbol of America's unhealthy snack food somehow even more sugary was a good call. You can just taste that tooth rot. Hi, my name is Henry, and I avoid advertising. Isn't it an interesting concept? Attempting to convince the common individual that a product is worth their time, as well as their valuable green pictures of dudes that died over 100 years ago. And as the corporate lizard people scramble to find whatever their audience is attracted to, on occasion we can get a few wacky minor slip-ups. And by a few wacky minor slip-ups, I mean sometimes companies lose over 30 million because they decided to start selling pure sugar water. Well, I've referenced it enough already. Might as well kick off this video using it as our first example. To start this tale off, we're going to have to travel back to the age in which most of my slang and vernacular comes from, the 1980s. No, I won't stop saying the words radical and bodacious, and there's nothing in your power that you can do to stop me. Coca-Cola had been losing a significant amount of stock share to diet soft drinks. So, to get to the bottom of why this was, they set up a few blind taste tests, and found that consumers preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. Pepsi also had Pepsi Man as their mascot, so there's another advantage. Coke realized that if they wanted to increase their Titan-like status in the cola market, some changes would need to be made. Enter New Coke, a complete reformulation of the OG recipe that somehow makes it even more sugar-packed. New Coke was slapped onto store shelves around April of 1985, with production of the classic Coca-Cola formula being completely stopped about a week after its introduction. Coke CEO Goizuda described the flavor of New Coke as bolder, rounder, and, quote, more harmonious. Alright, calm down with the descriptions, man. You're still talking about soft drinks here. For a while, New Coke was actually mildly successful in its sales, and seemed like the right move. But as you would expect from such a sudden change from the classic formula, for some people, it led to the product-consumer equivalent of whiplash. For you see, for many customers, this reformulation was much more than just a simple marketing stunt. This was a personal attack. Following the change, Coke received over 40,000 calls and letters from common people who felt betrayed by this major change. And it certainly did not just stop there, as it became a punching bag for comedians and even talk show hosts. Hell, even Fidel Castro of all people got involved with the drama. Wait, what? Eventually, after a considerable amount of fighting within the company, 79 days after New Coke was introduced, Coca-Cola executives announced the return of the original Coke formula in the form of Coca-Cola Classic. And by the end of 1985, Coca-Cola Classic managed to outsell not only New Coke, but even outsold Pepsi, who started this all to begin with. Coke had realized that their fatal flaw lied in the major underestimation of how emotionally attached America was to the classic formula. Come on, its main colors are red and white, was that not a sign? And even though in the end, Coke did technically end up getting the results they desired in the first place by outselling Pepsi, it kind of came at a price. This big stunt ended with Coke being viewed as a completely clueless corporation who managed to slip up so bad that they had to pull the 1980s equivalent of a YouTuber apology video and retract their controversial decisions. And this sentiment would not fade away anytime soon, as the name of New Coke would forever be shrouded in infamy. It would eventually see a momentary reintroduction in 2019 as a promotion for the third season of that one Netflix show that people like. In an ironic turn of events, they received surprisingly positive reviews, with some even stating that they preferred it to normal Coke. But everybody already knows about New Coke. New Coke's old news. Why don't we talk about something a little more recent? This isn't related to soft drinks, but it still manages to be a good demonstration of the patriotic American love of unhealthy foods. Red Lobster, a seafood restaurant with very tasty food. That is, if you could ignore the overwhelming guilt of watching a cook take a lobster out of the tank after ordering. This crustaceous tale takes us back to 2003. Red Lobster's at the time president, Edna Morris, noticed that their $14.99 all-you-can-eat buffet was pretty profitable. So she hatched a plan for a new promotion that would be even profitable. A $22.99 all-you-can-eat buffet which includes snow crab legs, named the Endless Crab Promotion. And when they said endless, they meant endless, as in customers could literally order as much crab as they could choke down. A lot of you can probably already see where this is going, but even before the actual promotion, there were already a multitude of factors which spelled out disaster for this whole thing. The downfall started with its promise of large amounts of snow crab, as the start of the event had been inexplicably scheduled at the worst possible time, where snow crab quotas were relatively low, and wholesale prices were correspondingly high, and the price would only get higher and higher the more time the promotion went on. So already they were biting off more than they could chew with this. No pun intended, as we're actually about to talk about the disastrous feast itself. Well, the pun was a little bit intended. To say that Red Lobster underestimated the appetite for crustaceans would be a gross understatement, but not nearly as gross as the amounts of seafood that customers managed to consume. As mentioned before, this was all promoted as endless. And although I'm clearly making these companies out to be a bit incompetent here, I'll give credit where credit is due. They certainly stayed true to their word. Well, at the expense of the possibility of making back any money. The promotion certainly proved to be popular with people as customers would come in and order plate after plate, after plate, after plate, after plate. They ordered a lot. The first 2 servings were fine. Not exactly great, but manageable at the least. But by the 3rd serving, the restaurant was already in the red, and anything else beyond that was just salt in the wound. Another relatively small but still fairly notable issue was that snow crabs are very time-consuming to eat. You have to crack the shells open to actually eat the meat, which can take a minute. This in turn led to customers staying for much longer than usual, and prevented other people from taking tables during peak times. An attempt to turn the situation around was made when franchise owners were given permission to increase the price from the original $22.99, but this did little to nothing. The campaign lasted a good 3 months before finally crashing and burning. And as for the loss that Red Lobster went through, a whopping $3.3 million. Not that bad, all things considered, right? All of the blame for this fiasco fell onto the hands of Red Lobster's president, Edna Morris, who shortly afterwards stepped down from her position. It wasn't necessarily an awful concept, but rather it was the poor timing and other circumstances that proved to be the main issue. Hey, speaking of the wrong circumstances fucking everything up, let's talk about the marketing disaster which I consider to be easily the most amusing. And also, sticky. Breaking world records, or at least trying to, is definitely one of the rarer marketing strategies, but in the few cases that there has been, they've shown to be very profitable. Plenty of publicity, as well as having done something cool that people can look at and say, hey, that's pretty cool. There's Yahoo's largest simultaneous yodel, Kellogg's most cereal boxes toppled like dominoes. Fun stuff, really. In comes Snapple. Drinks! And also frozen stuffs, apparently. They had a new line of frozen treats, and a peculiar idea to promote them, breaking the world record for the world's largest popsicle, previously set by a 21-foot-tall ice pop in Holland back in 1997, which I can't find photos of, so you're just gonna have to trust that me and my sources aren't complete bullshit. I don't get it. Nobody would even be able to eat it. It's too big. So, Snapple got to work, and they actually successfully made the much larger popsicle. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, you, specifically. nobody else who's watching this. You're probably saying out loud to your computer screen, but Henry, I thought these were marketing fails. How could this be considered a failure if they successfully managed to complete the objective? Well, first of all, I can't hear you from inside this thing. Try turning up your volume or something. And secondly, it wasn't so much the creation of the comically large popsicle that was the problem here, but rather it was the unveiling of said comically large popsicle. For you see, this kiwi strawberry monstrosity had quite the journey ahead of it. It had to be transported to Manhattan's Union Square during a hot first day of summer. And frozen treats kind of have a tendency to do this thing during high levels of heat.
Unfortunately, the attempt today didn't qualify because one of the stipulations is that the structure must be freestanding, which on this occasion it was not. So unfortunately, we do not have a new Guinness World Record today.
Haha, whoopsie daisy. Yep, when it finally came time to erect, upon opening the truck, came out a very, very, very long stream of melted popsicle goop, making its way down 17th Street. According to the Guinness World Record representative who was lucky enough to see this all unfold with their own eyes, the most unsettling part of it all was how the fluid just kept on going. For whatever reason, they still momentarily considered pulling the mess upwards using a construction crane, but that choice was unsurprisingly not pondered for very long. Firefighters were called in to hose down the area and close off streets. How could they have possibly not foreseen this happening during a New York summer? Well, apparently they did take the weather into consideration, as organizers stated that it was supposed to be able to withstand the heat for longer, and that they weren't exactly sure why it didn't. Or, maybe that's just something they said to make it seem like they took that factor into consideration. So, they hauled the almost popsicle back into the truck, and I for the life of me cannot find anything anywhere on the internet about what they did with whatever remained of the popsicle, so I'm just gonna assume Snapple went the Atari route and buried it in a remote desert somewhere. If anybody else has any theories, feel free to share them. Just know that they're wrong. In fact, despite easily being one of my favorites, there's relatively little information on the web about it, including whatever amount of money was lost from this stunt. Which is disappointing, since I definitely would have loved to see how much of a negative impact was made beyond just public humiliation. It's certainly all very elusive. Fiat. Cars. Spain. Romantic. Year? 1994. And Fiat's brand new form of vehicular transport, the Cinquecento, or the Fiat 500, is out. And with it comes an interesting idea on how to advertise it. Love letters, specifically targeted at women in Spain. Okay, strange, but as long as it's made clear that this is just a goofy little advertisement for a car, it should be. Yesterday we saw each other again. We met on the street and I noticed how you glanced interestedly in my direction. I only need to be with you for a couple of minutes, and even if it doesn't work out, I promise you won't regret our little experience together. Oh. Or you could make it sound like they have a stalker. That'll get them buying. Yes, Fiat sent over 50,000 of these letters, written from the perspective of a sentient car, to random women in Spain with absolutely no context whatsoever, and without any hint that this was simply a promotion. In concept, they were supposed to play on old-school romantic tropes like intrigue and mystery, but in execution, they instead just played on paranoia, as a multitude of the women would go on to contact authorities believing they had some kind of stalker. Others wouldn't leave their homes for days out of fear. Apparently there was a private investigation at some point. Fiat sent yet another letter, except this time it was an apology, and also an invite to their stores, cause hey, these cars aren't gonna buy themselves. Social Prime Minister Cristina Alberti caught wind of this incident, leading to even further outrage as well as a lawsuit. Needless to say, Fiat learned their lesson in how not to use outdated sexist romantic concepts in the selling of their products, and wouldn't do such a thing again. Until 2016, when they did such a thing again. Albeit in a smaller scale compared to their last incident, Fiat Argentina included a handbook alongside their operating manual, which includes such classy and unproblematic pieces of advice such as, if a lady's skirt is too short, we recommend that she travel in the back seat to keep our concentration. If the skirt is not that short but you tend to have a wandering hand, she should also travel in the back. And also a brief mention that car heaters are good for keeping a pizza warm, but also useful for trying to coax a girl into taking off clothes. If you felt yucky having to listen to me say that, imagine how I felt having to read it. Luckily for me, the internet never takes anything out of context, so I should be in the clear. In our modern technological world, keeping your identity safe from possible internet hackermen is important. And before you begin skipping, no, this isn't an ad for a VPN. LifeLock, a company which works in preventing that thing I was just talking about from happening. Now, with what the company deals with is very serious, so obviously you have to convince the common folk that you're trustworthy, and that your company truly is capable of...
I'm Todd Davis, and I'm here to prove just how safe your identity can be with LifeLock. That's my real social security number.
Is he serious?
You're nuts, man.
Can you believe this?
Well, we can all be winners. Yeah, I could just send this right now, and you'd probably know everything you need to know. Yes, the CEO of the company, Todd Davis, not to be confused with Todd Davis or Todd Davis, we're talking about Todd Davis here, had so much faith in what LifeLock was selling that his big ad campaign was him posting a social security number all around NYC, claiming that it didn't matter, as LifeLock services would prevent any identity theft. Billboards, commercials, you can't not steal this guy's identity. I already know where this story is going. You already know where this story is going. How in God's name nobody over at the company saw where this was going is beyond me. In the only possible outcome, Davis got his identity stolen not once, not twice, but a total of 13 times. Honestly, I have a feeling most of the people who committed those acts of identity theft did it for the sole purpose of proving the campaign wrong. First incident was June 2007, a $500 check from a check cashing company. Second incident, somebody created an AT&T account using his info. Over $2,390 in charges. And this cycle of Davis finding out he had his identity stolen months after the damage had been done would continue with incidents spanning up until 2008. LifeLock refused to make statements about the situation to large news companies such as New Times, but they were forced to acknowledge it when the Federal Trade Commission fined them over $12 million for deceptive advertising. Which, I mean, fair. And upon this, a few other shady things about LifeLock would come to light, such as stating in their ads that they would be willing to compensate customers with $1 million if they were ever to become a victim after signing up for the service.
Anything happens for any reason while you're a client of LifeLock, we will cover all losses and all expenses up to $1 million.
$1 million. You're going to protect me for $1 million?
Apparently this was completely bogus, and LifeLock was accused of operating a scam, with Davis being made out to be a bit of a con artist. Moral of the story? Don't make your social security number public information. Aren't you glad you have my wise and kind hand to guide you through this confusing world? Okay, I must confess, I've basically already talked about all the specific stories that I wanted to talk about, and most of the other marketing disasters that I've researched don't really have enough history or depth to take up an entire section of this video. So instead, I decided that we can just do mini-summaries of a few short and wacky silly mishaps and hiccups that have happened in the past. Susan Boyle, that woman who did that one thing on that one show once that people liked. Liked it so much, in fact, she decided to make an album. And the hashtag to promote it? Sus Anal Bum Party. Sorry, I mean Susan Album Party. The other is what I like to call the yearly goth femboy meetup. Well, the hashtag certainly did its job of getting the idea out there, albeit probably not the idea they had in mind. And those wacky rapscallions over at Twitter had a ball with this one for a while. One Krispy Kreme had a promotion during summertime, titled Krispy Kreme Club Wednesday. The thing is, they spelt club with a K, leading to this unfortunate acronym. I know I've probably asked the question of how did nobody think this was a bad idea a few times during this video, but really? Bud Light started a hashtag called Up for Whatever, and part of that campaign included adding a number of slogans to their bottles, one of which read, and by the way, this had to go through a number of layers of approval, The perfect beer for removing no from your vocabulary for the night. I'll just go ahead and let you think about the issues with that one for a minute. Panasonic made a Japanese computer back in the 90s, and since the caveman-like world at the time still viewed them as threatening machines, they had decided that they had to demonstrate that the computer was actually your friend. And what better way to demonstrate that than by licensing it with Woody Woodpecker? Everybody loves that guy. They were so convinced this would open people up to computers that they had to make this aspect its namesake. So meet the Woody. Now hold your horses, we aren't even at the funny yet. As the most common tagline for this piece of hardware, was Touch Woody, the Internet Pecker. Okay, there it was, that was the funny. Now I grant you permission to laugh. And this opens up the door to the world of poorly named products, which you will be very amused by if you're like me and your sense of humor hasn't evolved since you were 12. Right off the bat, here we have cum. Spelled K-U-M, cause surely that'll differentiate it from anything else that word might remind you of. Cum is of course a hair product, because it wasn't easy enough to make jokes about it before. It gets its name from having kumquat extract as its lead ingredient, a feature so unique they just had to make it its namesake. Here's Mother Fuker's Salted Nuts. What? How'd you think that was pronounced? An MP3 player named the Trexter IB... Ho-ho, not reading that one out loud. McVitie's Cookies, or as they're also known, Finger Marie. Thanks for the offer, I'm flattered, but also very ace. And of course, I'd absolutely be doing the history of marketing disasters a disservice if I didn't mention good old classic ayds. You guys like ayds? Personally, I can't get enough of ayds. When I say ayds, I'm of course referring to the dietary supplement from the 1970s. You know, just in case you mistook it for any other popular well-known ayds.
I've tried fad diets, powders, pills, still my weight's been up and down like a yo-yo, until the ayds plan taught me how to take off weight and help keep it off.
Ayds may taste like a candy, but Ayds contains one of the most effective appetite suppressants you can buy, and there's no stimulant in Ayds that could
Although
make you
ayds has
nervous.
been around for as long as the 1930s, it didn't start popping off until the 1970s, when dietary supplements were all the rage. And ayds spread like wildfire. Its candy-like taste made it an absolute hit with customers. There really was nothing quite like the joy of ayds. Wait a minute, it sounds like that one disease! In the defense of ayds couldn't have predicted that AIDS would start such a movement during that time and soil the AIDS name. Needless to say, AIDS did quite the number on AIDS, and AIDS was discontinued. Oh, how one desires to feel the glee of spreading the joy of AIDS around again. Can you tell I had fun writing this bit? And for our next little section to wrap things up, let's take a look at some good old fun translation fails. Everybody knows Got Milk, but Spanish translations left many people believing the iconic slogan was, "Are you lactating?" No, but thanks for checking in. KFC expanded their market to China, and was successful, despite their finger-licking good slogan roughly translating into, "Eat your fingers off." Sure, what else are you supposed to do with them? Another Spanish translation butchering comes from Parker Pen Company, whose slogan of, "Won't leak in your pocket and embarrass you," became, "Won't leak in your pocket and impregnate you," in case that was a concern you had. McDonald's dodged a bit of a bullet, as at one point the signature Big Mac was going to be named the Gross Mac, meaning Big Pump. Appetizing. Mercedes-Benz entered the Chinese market with the name Benzi, roughly translating into Rush to Die, which sounds metal as balls but obviously wasn't too marketable for cars. Similarly, Ford's Every Car Has a High Quality Body in Belgium was something along the lines of Every Car Has a High Quality Corpse. Well, that was a fun little deep dive into some silly little companies engaging in some silly little things. It's especially great how since these incidents, no companies have ever made any big mistakes at all. Hey, speaking of which, I still need a stunt to help get my name out there, but what would really get my name out there? Wait, I have an idea. Oh yeah, this'll get them buying.